We do not often think about the impact that our clothing has on the world around us. But fashion is estimated to produce up to 10% of humanity's carbon emissions. It dries up water sources. Pollution is put directly into fresh streams and ends up all over the world. This pollutes our rivers, pollutes our streams, pollutes our oceans. And get this, more than 85% of the textiles that are created each year go directly into the dump. They don't get purchased, they don't get recycled, they don't get used. What we also find is that some types of clothing, when you wash them, sends thousands of bits of microscopic plastic into the ocean that can never be retrieved. Furthermore, there's major human rights violations throughout the entire manufacture of clothing, from people being enslaved to pick cotton, to people being forced to work in extraordinarily unsafe conditions. We even have seen factories collapse and kill more than 1,000 people in one day. We also know that when we take a greater look at our clothing, we see that it's often sprayed with toxic chemicals that can be absorbed across the surface of our skin. So it's not just about the environment. It's not about human rights violations. It is about our own health and the health of our families and our children as well. In today's episode, I'm first talking with fashion designer Fulya Turkmenoglu, who started a company where she produces medical devices that are not only fashionable and that you would actually want to wear out in public, but is also sustainable, honors the workers and the laborers that go into the production of our clothing. After that, I have a fascinating conversation with Carrie Summers. She is the founder of Fashion Revolution, the world's premier advocacy group for transparency in our clothing production. She just returned from sailing around the globe, studying microplastic waste in the environment, and she's going to give us some easy pointers on what we can do to reduce waste in the clothing system and to wear healthier clothes. Let's get to the show. Welcome to the Lindsey Elmore Show, a podcast that helps you find fulfillment amidst chaos. On this show, I interview thought leaders, doctors, creatives, spiritual gurus, and game changers who inspire you to pursue your dreams, overcome obstacles, and leave your mark. Medical devices for a wide variety of reasons. They may use them to prevent injury if they play extreme contact sports like football. They may wear them following an injury to stabilize joints, or they may need a device that actually limits their motion as they're actively repairing. Maybe they need a knee brace to help with the pain and inflammation associated with things like arthritis. Obesity is increasing the need for medical braces as well. Unfortunately, most medical braces are not anything that you want to wear out in public. Fulya Turkmenoglu is the founder of Jaiyou Medical Devices. She has a background in fashion design and graduated from the Fashion Institute of Technology. She worked in the fashion industry before earning a Master's of Science at the Parsons Design School Strategic Design and Management program. The new mindset that Fulya gained during this program planted the seeds for Jaiyou, her company that she works collaboratively with businesses and organizations like Google, Net Impact, Intuit, and Innovate NYC. The mission of Jaiyou is to keep people going with modern body braces. Jaiyou goes the extra mile with breathable, flexible, and micro-massage technology and fabricates all of their devices in skin-friendly material. One thing's for sure, when it comes to medical devices, one size does not fit all. Jaiyou believes that people deserve thoughtful products that are made for progress. Jaiyou combines fashion and technology to give the most effective and fashionable body braces that you could wear to any occasion, anything from going to the gym to the first date. Plus, they're a company that cares, and they give 1% of their gross profits to the Special Olympics. So, Fulya, I am so excited to talk to you today on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
So, you and I met a few months back at an event for entrepreneurial women, and I was fascinated by your story, and I kind of am calling this segment like medical devices, but make it fashion. So, how did you get started and realize that there was a need for medical devices that actually empowered women and were like things that you actually wanted to wear?
Yeah, it has a long story behind, and I was lucky enough to be able to work on the project for 2 years with my master's. And it was like it has long research process behind. The idea started with totally something else, like functional wearables for the people with special needs. Mm-hmm. And then, throughout the research and when it comes to narrowing down the topic, to start your own business, put your business idea out there, executable business idea. We narrowed down the topic and we ended up with the orthopedic supports and braces. But the idea is coming from the devices, the smart wearables for the people with special needs. Like differently abled people or differently abled athletes, even animals, even kids, and this is going to be our next strategy. Like we want to keep working on that kind of products that are going to make people's life easier, animals' life easier, and to keep them running, to keep them staying active in their daily life. So yeah, that was the inspiration behind the idea.
So it's interesting because it sounds like as a part of your training, you actually had to create a business plan that actually you went the next step and actually made it a business. So where did you decide that there is this void in sports medicine? Like, did you look around and just go, nobody's making fashionable medical devices, maybe I can fill that void? Or was there a person in your life with special needs who inspired you to go this direction?
To be honest, fashion industry inspired me. I was working in fashion right after my graduation, and I was lucky enough to be able to work as a designer with other designers. And in the same room, every single day, we're talking about the same patterns. We're not changing anything. We're repeating ourselves. We're not using any pattern making techniques to make people's life easier or to make functional products. And that's why we're talking a lot about sustainability problems, and all other problems in fashion and textile industry, because we're not thinking about functionality. And I have so many inspirations around me. My father is a doctor. I was hearing a lot of problems with the medical devices, not only sports medicine, everything, even the MRI machine for the kids. It's such a painful process for them to go through all these medical treatments. So we need to change everything, and it's just a small start for my company. I wanted to use my background in fashion. If you're in fashion, if you're a designer, and if you're from FIT, you need to know everything. From the pattern making techniques to different body proportions and designing for them. So I wanted to use that background with something new. Design thinking, this is how we call that, Parsons. Design thinking, designing the products not for the sake of design, but for people. Not for the sake of beauty, but also functionality, but at the same time, making them attractive, making them useful. So yeah, that was the inspiration. And I'm so glad that, we found a way to start, because yes, we're thinking, all the design thinkers, all the designers, we're thinking about different things, but taking them into life, taking them to the manufacturing point is the most difficult and challenging part. So I think being surrounded by the right people, finding the right inspiration, and narrowing down the topic to find, yes, I want to design better prosthetics, but if I don't have millions of dollars, how am I going to start? start with the small, and sports medicine products was that thing.
So you have a bigger long-term vision of where you want to take the company. So right now it's wrist braces, it's knee braces. Amidst the coronavirus pandemic, you not only started making masks, but you went that extra step to get them FDA approved. And I asked you before we started recording, how did you figure all of this out? And so if someone is starting small on a brand new company, what advice would you have for an entrepreneur about, like, okay, sister, you're gonna have to figure a whole bunch of stuff out?
Yeah, so many things. So you have to do your research. It's not like, oh, I came up with the idea, let's start doing something. Maybe sometimes for some people it works, but in my case, it's just like, the long research process. And if you're standing in the medical area with all other big players, you need to play differently. And if you are, I don't want to mention about that a lot because I'm just like seeing that we're all human and we all are entrepreneurs, no matter we're man or woman. But like if you're a woman entrepreneur who is coming from a fashion design background, sometimes you have to deal with that prejudice. She's only thinking about the design side, which is perfect. She's taking the products into the fashion point, which is great. But no one is thinking about what is behind. So that's why if an X person is working 2 times, I feel like I have to work 4 times because of my background, because of what I'm trying to do as a small startup owner. So, yeah.
Well, and it's also the way you look. You're beautiful, you're young, you're blonde, all the things. And so people automatically discount that, like, no, this chick is actually going to figure this out. She's going to bring these devices that matter. So what do you think when you look around at a local pharmacy or at an orthopedic shop? What do you think the major problems with knee braces and ankle braces and wrist braces and back support, like what are the problems that you see in those devices and how are you and your company solving them?
Perfect. So my process started like that. I went to the drugstore and purchased all the products.
Nice.
To experience everything by myself. And then I started asking people and try to match the answers. So in my experience, they were smelly because most of them are made of neoprene, which is a petroleum-based material.
And you sweat under it so much.
Non-breathable. Yes, we have some high-quality products in the market, but first of all, it's not easy to find them. They're not over-the-counter products. Like you need to go to the website, the brand's website. You need to order and wait for them, and they're super expensive. They're mostly made for the people that like professional people, like athletes, or who can afford a couple $100 braces. And the second thing is most of them are their marketing is super male-oriented, and even their branding. So that's another thing that I experienced because we purchased all the products from Europe, from US markets to compare the sizing, the material, the quality, what are the qualifications they have, every single detail. Because if you're going to do something and if you're going to stand in that area, you need to know who you are competing with. And then during my research, we asked all these questions to people like, what are your expectations from the knee brace that you purchase or the back support? And then we learned that in so many areas, you need that kind of support, but people are hesitant to wear them because of all these problems. When it touches your skin, it's irritating. Or it doesn't look good. It feels bulky, and you don't want to carry another heavy brace just to get better. It doesn't help, and it really affects the surgery rates in the US. So, with all these deep research, we try to find like better options, like lightweight products, still supportive. And the next step was after we completed our first prototyping, we sent everything to doctors, to orthopedists, to professionals. To hear their feedback about the products. What are they going to suggest us if they would love to suggest our products in comparison to other products in the marketplace. It helped a lot, a lot. And it shortened our, prototyping process and then pivoting some design details and being ready for the market. And it's been 1.5 years so far. Besides the sizing issues, we never got any return. I think it's success. I'm so glad to hear like amazing feedback from our customers. And besides the product, I think customer service is also super important for us and being part of the community. And we are designing and developing the products with them. We are always open to hear the feedback from them. I think all these things, they can access us easily. They can email us easily if they have any complaint. Recently, we had that kind of problems, because of the border-related issues. We have late shippings and stuff, and it's all about communication after you finish the prototyping design, and like constant communication to get better, because nobody is perfect. None of the product is perfect. You cannot say that it's the peak level, right?
Not yet.
Yeah.
That's why you keep working.
Yeah, so that's why I think, being ready for the market, and after that, keeping that communication and relationship between you and the product user or
Absolutely.
the receiver.
So if you're thinking more long term, what are your ultimate goals and visions for your company?
I want to be a brand name that people trust us no matter what we do. I really adore that kind of mindset. I really adore that kind of entrepreneurs no matter what. I want to hear that, it's coming from Jaiyou. Yes, we trust and we want to buy and try. I think building that trust is the most important thing, because we might fail with the product. We might fail with technology, right? Like all other companies. But I don't want to fail with the trust and the brand value. It's the most important thing. But of course, like when it comes to like product-wise, getting Special Olympics on board was a big milestone because the idea behind that is if people with mental disabilities can still part of an active life, everybody can be. There is no excuse. You just need to support your body and keep moving. Your knee pain is not going to be an excuse for you not to go and walk. And it's the same thing with all other, minor injuries. Unless it's harmful for your body, we can still keep moving. And there is so many research behind that, exercise helps you to keep your mental and physical health throughout your life. We want to have that kind of life-supporting products. And I always say, today we do orthopedic supports and braces. In the near future, it might be something else. But we always want to support people to be part of an active life. That's the mission of Jaiyou.
Absolutely. So what made you want to partner with Special Olympics?
I knew them before. They're really huge. I mean, there's so many other big and great organizations, but I knew them before, and I always adored what they're trying to do all around the world with all, other people, communities, organizations. They're around, they're going to celebrate their 50th year this year. When we had a meeting with their vice president, I was just like, that's such a right decision. And I appreciate that they welcomed us to their family. We want to do more right now. We're experiencing all these difficulties and we're so new in this area. But it was a big achievement for Jaiyou in the second month. We got accepted. To be honest, they don't need just a startup company that, we couldn't even prove ourselves in our field. But it was amazing to hear that what we're trying to do is really special for them. And she accepted us, their vice president. She accepted us. She came to our office, visited us, and see what we're trying to do. And she congratulated. It was a big achievement for me. And, you put some goals. And once you get the goals, my goals are always getting this on board and adding more responsibility. Getting Special Olympics on board, I know that it's going to add more responsibility to us. It's not if we sell, if don't, it's okay. No, you are taking such a big responsibility by being part of it. And getting that kind of responsibilities motivates me personally. And getting them on board, I think, is going to give us great insights, what we need to do, how we can combine the mental and the physical activities, and then how we can find better solutions by combining technology, medical products, for the people with mental or physical disabilities, how we can help them. We had that interview with one of the yoga instructors, and she said that even doing yoga like mentally helps you. So sometimes, yes, we have some physical disabilities maybe, or we are physically differently abled, but when it comes to I don't know, getting better, wellness, healing yourself, your soul and your mind, mindfulness, it's all connected to each other. Whatever you can, just do it, and whatever we can do to support that process, we would be more than happy to collaborate with all these professionals in different fields.
Absolutely. So you mentioned motivation, and it sounds like in your heart, you just want people to live super healthy lives. But looking at your background, I mean, you could have gone to work for a fashion house. You could have gone to work for a big name brand that was well established and really said, I mean, it's no small feat to be like, I've worked for Ralph Lauren for 25 years. Why become an entrepreneur instead? What made you decide, like, I'm going to do something different with my education and training?
Right after my graduation, I had a chance to start as a fashion merchandiser assistant at a fashion company, London-based fashion company. And it was an amazing experience for me right after the graduation. And then I saw that, yes, I need to be in the business side. And when I was working as a designer, I was the one who is presenting the products or the designs to buyers. So I was always more interested in the business side. But until my graduation, I didn't understand that. So I think it was the thing when I started working, I say that, no, the idea actually started from there. Like, why do we put the border in between designers and the business people? And then they have that conflict. It was my fight every single day in fashion industry. Designers are here, business people are here, they don't communicate, and then we have so many problems. How we're gonna solve them? They need to understand the business facts. You're not doing an artwork if you're working for fashion and if it's not haute couture or something special. So we don't understand each other. There is a huge gap. The idea, to be honest, like when I started my project at Parsons, was like building an environment for the people, for all these professionals, psychologists or designers or fashion designers, putting them together and coming up with creative designs. But it was huge. And then we narrowed it down, and I decided to create that environment at Jaiyou. And now I see myself like pushing people with designer mindset to do marketing and sales without letting them know the titles. And you know what? The result is amazing, super creative. So when you put the titles, when you give them, okay, this is your responsibility. Like, you are gonna be the salesperson, you're going to be the marketing person, you are limiting that person, especially creative people. Yes, some people like it, like, okay, give my responsibility, do not expect anything else. But I think it's coming from being part of a design school and learning the business and science, again, in a design environment at the Parsons Design School. I am always trying to keep that creative side, but it's not necessary that I'm not going to understand the business side, the numbers, how the market works. It was a big inspiration. And even in fashion, even in art and design industry, once we understand that we are going to close the gap in between the creatives and the business part of the industry. And I think so many problems, like when you talk about sustainability, they're like thinking about numbers. So, okay, talk about sustainability, but still understand that this company needs to run and make money. So find a way to explain that to your boss or to your manager, that yes, we have those problems, but at the same time, we need to find a solution to run our company in a long term. And the companies that they rejected the idea are dying one by one today, you see. So yeah, it's super complex. Like, I cannot say that, and it was like super limited area for me just to think about the designs, the patterns, the colors and everything, but not thinking about the future. And like when your mind is full of with all these things, you're like, okay, why am I limiting myself? And then I started working in edtech, education technology. And it was my first managing experience, managing small teams and then international teams. Our company was half Chinese. It was an amazing experience. So, and I used that opportunity by being part of a startup company. And then, I started my own business, but I always had that urge. Like, I was always thinking, but the way that I started was kind of interesting. Not like, it was a one-day decision. It wasn't something like, oh, okay, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start I kind of forced to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm glad. But yeah, I mean, most of the entrepreneurs think in that way. They're not like, they wake up and they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to quit my job and start a business. It's just like one thing happens and then you got no other option, but you have to start.
That is exactly what I was about to say. Most entrepreneurs are like, crap, I just got fired. I just got laid off. There's a pandemic and I don't know where my next paycheck is coming from. I know that is true for me, and I think it's true for a lot of entrepreneurs that you just go, well, crap, now what? And that is how companies start. Yes. And I think it's important because not everyone has that grit to just dig deep and say, I'm going to make this happen. And you did. And you just said, you know what? I'm going to make this happen. And now you have a company that has a couple of employees. You're having to go well beyond what you were schooled to do as far as like pattern making. I mean, like, I wouldn't know where to start sourcing lumbar support for medical devices, but you just have to figure it out as an entrepreneur. So the name Jaiyou, what does it mean?
So in Sanskrit, Jai means victory. And sometimes you end the yoga sessions as Jai. And in Chinese, in Mandarin, it's Jaiyou means, we played with the word a little bit, but it means fuel it and go.
Oh, wow.
So it's just like, that's a great, idea that having that kind of name, like fuel it and go. And they support the athletes and the people when they watch the games and stuff with that word. We played with a little bit, but Jai in Sanskrit is still victory, and victory is you as long as you want to.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, are you ready for some lightning round questions?
Of course.
Okay. So what is your greatest strength?
Being positive.
What is the thing that you still struggle with?
So many things. So sometimes I have less patience for the things. I want everything like, okay, let's get it done. But yeah, I need to be more realized of the people and my environment and everything. But yeah, I just cannot consider everything. It's just like, get it done, do it like right away.
What keeps you up at night?
My work right now, my company.
Your work right now. I mean, we're in the midst of a crazy time. Yes. And so it's not easy for any entrepreneur, especially when you're a small business and you're still trying to get the word out about your company. Yeah. So, but I have the utmost confidence you guys are going to come out on the other side of it. So who has been your greatest inspiration?
It really changes time to time, but I think my mom, my parents, I don't know, people who are coming from different backgrounds. I really love what Steve Jobs did, even though he has so many, he had so many conflicts with some other entrepreneurs or the people. I really love people that are coming from different backgrounds, self-made, and do something different for the people that makes them happy. It really inspires me. And Elon Musk recently, he's trying to, like, people who are trying to make the things differently, even though they know that they're going to call it's crazy. Mm-hmm. So it really inspires me.
What has been one of the greatest aha moments in your life?
Thinking. When I decided to quit, that time I decided to quit my job. Like before quitting my job, I started my master's. Then I saw that it's not, like, you cannot put yourself in both area, and I decided to quit my full-time job and started exploring different areas. And I was just like, yes, I want to be a design strategist. I don't want to be a fashion designer. It was really life-changing for me in my career path.
Yeah, so forget the lightning round. Tell us a little bit more about what strategic design even is.
It's such a great term. strategic design is designing for the people, designing for the new world. Everything is changing so fast. Right now, we're designing for the new economies. So we need to be ready for everything, being ready for uncertain, and then designing by putting so many research behind from your customer, from your manufacturer, if it's product, from the end user, designers, other professionals. It's not like, okay, we decided to do that and copy and paste exact same thing over and over again. No, think about it. So yeah, I think design term is such a broad term, but the way that we use in our life is kind of not fair. So that's why we have so many. I had a book that I forgot the name, that it includes all these designs that are not functional at all, but they sold thousands of products and stuff, and how how it affected the environment, from the plastic to the material that they used. So yeah, designing for functionality, designing to have a better world, thinking about it. Like, okay, we decided to design this glass, but why? Why this shape? Why this material? How it's going to affect, like thinking about the entire process, having that broad spectrum. And I really love that idea. Sometimes we're talking about one simple product like an R, but not because of that product, it's because the process, like where it comes from. And then it started in fashion industry as well, like who made our clothes, campaigns and stuff. So we need to think more, and we need to let people know what they should expect. It's not like I made this and you are gonna buy this kind of process anymore. People expect more, and they deserve better. We all deserve better, so that's the idea.
And especially the people that make our clothing deserve better. I mean, the fashion industry is the second largest polluter in the entire world, second only to oil and gas, which I think is insane. And the push towards fast fashion and disposable fashion is not good, because then the people that make our clothes, they're disenfranchised, they're not paid fairly, they are sometimes caught up in human slavery. Like there is a lot of darkness in the way that the fashion industry is run. And even when you spend a lot of money on clothes, you still don't know that the person who stitched it together is getting paid a fair wage, that they're not being forced to work 16, 18 hours a day. And so I agree with you, thinking about the entire process and the people that go into the clothes that you're wearing is a profound idea amidst our consume culture, and that's not acceptable anymore. It's totally not acceptable. So I am so glad that you have educated me on what the heck strategic design is, and how there are other people who are thinkers like you, who say it's not just about the glass, it's about why this glass, why this shape, why this material, who's going to make it, how are we going to ship it to ensure it doesn't break when it's on its way, all of those things that go into it. So, all right, back to our lightning round. Last question. God to you is?
Energy.
Energy, yes, all of that wonderful energy. Well, listeners, today, if you would like to get some fashion-forward medical devices, head to www.jaiyou.com, jaiyou.com. You can use the code MOVE20 to save 20% off of your orders, and you are also offering a free downloadable. Is it yoga for back pain, I believe?
Yes.
And where can our listeners access that?
If they go to our website, they can find the link. Free guide link, and we also shared with you, so maybe you can include the link.
Absolutely, we will put that link in the show notes. Well, Fulya Turkmenoglu, thank you so much for being on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor being here and sharing this amazing experience, being part of this amazing experience, and sharing all the details about the company, Jaiyou, and my entrepreneurial experience as well. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
If you are a real menstruating human, I cannot say enough for how much period-proof panties from Thinx will change your period for the better. Whether you grab a thong for the days leading up to your period or grab a super high-waisted pair that holds up to 4 tampons worth of flow, Thinx gives you the confidence that you need to tackle anything that life throws at you while you're on your period. For me personally, since I switched to Thinx, I find that my periods are less painful, lighter, shorter, and they are most definitely less wasteful. Plus, I just love the mission and vision of the company. All menstruators deserve to have choice, access, and common sense understanding of how to care for themselves when they're on their periods. If you're ready to ditch the pads and tampons and join the revolution, head to www.shethinks.com/Lindsey Elmore to save $10 off of your order. That's www.shethinx.com/Lindsey Elmore to save $10 off of your new favorite pair of period-proof panties. Carrie Summers is the founder and global operations director of Fashion Revolution. Inspired after the Rana Plaza factory collapse in Bangladesh, 7 years after the founding of Fashion Revolution, it has now become the world's largest fashion activism campaign. Millions of people have joined Fashion Revolution to demand more fair work practices, more transparent industry, and have asked the question, who made my clothes and what is in my clothes? Carrie just returned after sailing 2,000 miles from the Galapagos Island to Easter Island to investigate microplastic pollution waste in our environment. Before founding Fashion Revolution, Carrie set up her multi-award-winning fashion brand, Pachacuti, in 1992 after she attained a master's in Native American Studies. The fashion brand supported sustainable rural livelihoods for women in the Andean region. Her brand pioneered radical supply chain transparency and was the world's first fair trade certified company. Her collections were shown in London, Paris, and Milan Fashion Week and were sold in the world's foremost luxury stores. Carrie has won numerous awards for her work and met the Queen in recognition of her significant contribution to British business. In 2019, List named her one of the 8 sustainability icons pushing for change in the fashion industry alongside Emma Watson, Meghan Markle, Pharrell Williams, and Stella McCartney. Welcome, Carrie, to the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
I am so excited to talk to you today because I do not think that most people even understand that this is an issue, that there are major implications of the way that our clothing is manufactured, and what we choose dictates how that clothing is manufactured. And so tell us, how did you first start working in the fashion industry, and when did you become aware of the problems that faced consumers in selecting clothing?
Yes, well, I think the two are really very interrelated, because I certainly had no intention at all of embarking on a career in the fashion industry. And I was in Ecuador in 1990 doing research for my master's in Native American Studies. And I was looking at the traditional textile production processes. And it was about 6 o'clock one morning, and I went with some indigenous producers who were Quechua speakers and went with them to buy wool from the intermediaries. Now, that should be a really simple process. But I saw in front of me the weighing scales, that international symbol of justice, and I saw them being loaded with wool on one side. And then the producers were paying a price which bore no resemblance to the cost per kilo on the other side. They were exploited when they bought the raw materials, and they were exploited when they had to sell their knitwear back to the same middlemen. So very naively, I'd gone sailing for a year, and then I was coming back and I had a fully funded PhD ahead of me, and I had my summer holidays free. So I decided to set up a business to help some of these artisans, to give them a direct route to the market and to work with these cooperatives who had both experienced arson attacks because of the threat it posed to the middlemen by them actually grouping together in a community, in a cooperative. So I started my fledgling business. It wasn't easy. I had quite a successful first summer, and then I had all of my business profits stolen. I ditched my PhD by then. I had a large loan stolen in Ecuador. I had 2 death threats. But I persevered because I could really see how transformative it was. People were sending their children to school for the first time in the community. And gradually I moved out of knitwear, and Pachacuti became known for our really beautiful Panama hats, which are products which really support sort of women working in very remote rural areas in the Andes. And we sort of pioneered transparency and traceability in supply chains right back to the raw materials at a time when nobody talked about the importance of transparency.
So when did you decide to change from being really a designer producing, the hats and the garments, and decide to go into the activism? And how did Fashion Revolution come about?
Well, that was really purely by accident. I think, like most things seem to have been in my life. So, I mean, like I was saying, Pachacuti was a pioneer in fair trade, and I knew transparency was important. I knew transparency was important to give visibility to all of those artisans, to all of those hidden people in the supply chains, the people who were cutting our straw, who were processing it. But when I looked at the transparency pages of our website, nobody was interested. Nobody really visited them. And I think people wondered why I was banging on about transparency all the time. And then the Rana Plaza factory collapsed. And it was really clear to me that a big part of the reason for this collapse was the lack of transparency in supply chains. We saw activists having to actually physically search through the rubble to prove which brands were producing there. And I think a lot of people thought those brands were just playing for time. A lot of them really didn't know. They didn't know what their relationship was with the factories in that complex. And that's when I realised that the lack of transparency was costing lives within the fashion industry. And I think at that stage, I certainly hadn't thought about any kind of a response. I was just having a Sunday bath without much to think about. And the idea for Fashion Revolution really just hit me in the bath and seemed like a good enough idea to get out of my nice warm bath and do something about it. And Fashion Revolution really just snowballed because everyone knew that we couldn't have a disaster of that scale with so many people dying without it leading to revolutionary change within the fashion industry. And so here we are 7 years on, we're the world's largest fashion activism movement, and we're highly collaborative. We work with a lot of different people and organisations around the world to push brands into changing, to mobilise citizens, to push for policy change as well.
Yeah, so I mean, in that one day alone, more than 1,100 people lost their lives in that factory collapse. And Fashion Revolution, I'm sure, is about so much more than just preventing massive failures like this. You mentioned a moment ago that in the work that you did with Pachacuti, that people were able to send their children to school for the first time. So why is transparency so important? And can you give us some examples of women that you've worked with, families that you've worked with, communities that you've worked with, that you've seen completely transformed because of being paid fair wages or being given livable wages, or just put a human touch on this for us?
Yes, I mean, it's quite difficult in terms of the positives. I mean, I can certainly talk about my experience at Patch Acuity, but when we're talking about the global industry, which, is where most of us get our clothes from, there aren't that many positive stories, unfortunately. I mean, really nobody in the global fashion supply chain is receiving a living wage. It only takes, if you look at the retail price of an item of clothing, typically between about 1% and 3% of that retail price is the labour cost. Now, it's been estimated that if we paid the workers, workers in Bangladesh, a living wage, that would only rise to, they reckon it would put about 25 cents onto an item of clothing made in Bangladesh. It certainly wouldn't add on more than an extra 5%. And most surveys have shown that people would be willing to pay an extra 5% to ensure that their items of clothing are made in good, safe conditions. And at the moment, this just isn't happening. We've seen a lot more transparency of the factories where our clothes are made. But when you get further down the supply chain, I went to Bangladesh a couple of years ago and I visited the tanneries. Now, these are the tanneries who are tanning the leather for our handbags, maybe not the top luxury, but certainly that sort of mass-produced luxury premium level handbag. And I was really shocked. There was underage workers everywhere. There was no health and safety equipment. They were literally in sort of shorts and T-shirts with bare feet and no masks and no gloves, sitting on the piles of hide, covered in chemicals. The effluent was flowing out from these tanneries and straight into the drainage ditches and right out into the local river, home to a red-listed species of river dolphin. It was really just shocking. And I was told by the tanneries that no brand ever goes to visit the tanneries. So I think it's more in terms of it's the lack of transparency, and it's still, the industry is really characterized by that lack of transparency. And even though we've seen a lot of progress in the last 7 years, really working the fight for human rights, for basic dignity in the fashion supply chain is constant and it's costly. And we publish an annual fashion transparency index every year. And this year we surveyed 250 of the world's biggest fashion brands, and more than half of the brands scored less than 20%. So that really gives you an idea of whereabouts we are in terms of most of the big fashion brands out there.
Well, and I was shocked to learn that the fashion industry is the number 2 most polluting industry in the world. It's second only to oil and gas. And so you mentioned that, factories just have wastewater flowing into rivers and streams, into local water supply. What are some other environmental concerns within the fashion industry?
Yes, it's hard to know where to start, really. I think in terms of that statistic around it being the second most polluting industry, not quite sure we agree with that one. It's probably more like about the sort of 4th or the 5th, but it depends also on how you measure pollution. But what we can certainly say is that if you're looking at the carbon pollution, it emits about 1.2 billion tonnes of CO2 annually. Now, that's certainly more than international flights and shipping combined. So it's really significant. And the production process of turning fossil fuels into textiles, into those synthetic textiles for our clothing, also releases significant amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. One statistic I find really shocking is that it's been estimated that we need an 80% industry-wide cut in emissions by 2050 to align with a 2 degrees Celsius warming scenario. Whereas if we continue with a business as usual scenario, those emissions are actually projected to increase by 60% by 2030. So we really have so much more to do. And around 60% of the clothes that we wear are made from synthetic fibres, so nylon, polyester, acrylic. These are all plastics, and this has doubled in the last 20 years. And also when you look at other fibres like viscose, we know that deforestation for viscose is a really major issue, also deforestation for leather, and a lot of ancient and endangered woodlands are finding their way into our clothing. And the impact of fashion doesn't stop once it reaches our wardrobes. Textiles are also the largest source of both primary and secondary microplastic pollution. They account for around 35% of all microplastics which are found in our ocean, which I find really astonishing. There was actually a survey out last week by the University of Plymouth estimating that there could be double the amount of microplastics in our ocean, and that current estimates, which already say there's 1.4 million trillion microplastics in the ocean, could be more than double that. And these microplastics can't be cleaned up once they're out in the sea. So we really have to start looking for solutions on land. And a lot of that does start with our clothes, because every time we wash our clothes, an estimated 700,000 microfibers are released in every single wash cycle. And most of these are too small to be captured by those waste treatment plants, so they just flow straight out into the ocean. So it's really complicated, and unfortunately there aren't any really easy solutions, because a polyester shirt, yes, it sheds a lot of microfibers, and it can have more than double the carbon footprint of a cotton shirt, for instance. But synthetic fibres would also have less of an impact on water and land use. So we can't really say that there's any very easy solutions when it comes down to those raw materials.
So you just sailed more than 2,000 miles investigating microplastics, and I'll be honest, until you just said it right now, I think about oh yeah, my acrylic sweater is shedding, or my polyester dress is leaving, bits on my skin. But I've never considered that the fact that when I wash my clothes, things are flowing into the ocean that are not capturable. There's no way you're going to get them back. So what inspired you to do this sail, and why? What were you hoping to investigate and learn? And what did you learn along your journey?
Yes, this was an amazing voyage. As soon as I saw that there was going to be an all-women round-the-world sailing voyage to investigate microplastic, microfiber pollution, the toxic chemicals in the ocean, I knew I had to sign up for it. I used to sail on square riggers, I sailed on Velshida, the beautiful J-class yacht built in about 1917. So I spent quite a lot of time sailing. I'd sailed across the Atlantic, and I very much missed going to sea. And this really felt like it was a way of combining some of my passions for sailing, for the ocean, for educating people about the clothes we wear, but also we were sailing past those countries, Ecuador, Peru, down to Chile, the countries where I had worked for over 2 decades with Pachacuti. And I always feel like there's a lot we can learn from those indigenous cultures there. Lots of ways about how we can live in balance, in harmony with nature. So I was really excited to take part, and every day on board we were carrying out science. We carried out manta trawls, which was collecting the water and looking at the microplastics we captured from the surface of the ocean. We put the Niskin bottle down into the water column, and when we were closer to land we did sediment samples. We measured air pollution as well to see what microfibers and microplastics we found in the air. We did chemical sampling as well. And this voyage is actually going to create the first ever global data set of microplastic pollution, which is astonishing. And this is really invaluable information for policymakers and for companies, because there's companies who do want to act, and there are a lot of responsible companies out there, will know, once they know more about the density and the distribution of these microfibers, they will then know where better to act and where they have to work more, and where they can focus their resources. And it was so shocking. We sailed into the South Pacific Gyre, which is one of those areas of accumulation of microplastics. We spent most of the day doing science on board, and every time we put the manta trawl in and filtered the water, we could just see it in front of us. There were specks of blue, orange, red. This was in one of the most remote areas of the ocean, approaching Easter Island. It's called the loneliest island in the world. It's the most remote inhabited landmass. And we found 5 times more microplastics and microfibers than in all of our trawls outside of the gyre combined. So this was really shocking. And I think what I want to do is we need to bring this research back, but also to bring back my stories and observations, because it's only when you start to realise the significant impact that our clothing has on the environment that you can start to do something about it.
Well, let's just be honest. Not everybody cares about human rights. Not everybody cares about the environments. Not everybody cares about fair labor practices. But a lot of people really care about their own personal health. And I know many of our listeners have seen the documentary Stink, which is all about the scents that are used in our clothing. So you started the hashtag What's in My Clothes. How did that come about, and what would our listeners be potentially surprised to hear is in global clothing production, and what impact can it have on our health?
Yes, gosh, where to start on this one? Well, I mean, as soon as I knew I was going on an expedition, I knew that I wanted the composition of our clothing to be one of our key messages for Fashion Revolution this year, and hence this hashtag, What's in My Clothes? And there's quite a long history to this question for me. And it goes back to when my daughter, Sienna, was at primary school. And here in England, as in many countries, we have school uniforms, which are, school uniforms, usually a white shirt and a grey skirt and a blazer. And I read some research, quite obscure research by the Worldwide Fund for Nature. It came out in a publication in Wales about the chemicals in school uniforms. And there was very little information about this. I tried to do some research. And all of those coatings on this school wear, which are designed to make them easy for parents. So this is making them non-iron and stain resistant, meaning that they're not going to have as many scuffs. These have all been known to be damaging for human health and for wildlife. I mean, Teflon has even been found in polar bears. And I couldn't find any organic alternatives out there. So I set up, with my husband, we set up Clean Slate, which was the UK's first organic fair trade uniform company. Unfortunately, our producers got poached after a few years by another very large school uniform company. So it wasn't that successful as a company, but what it did do was it did a lot to raise awareness in the press and amongst the public. And I realised how many people had children with eczema, with dermatitis, who knew that it was the school uniform, which was really making that flare up, and couldn't put their children in these conventional clothes, which were covered in chemicals. And our skin is the body's largest organ, and there's really surprisingly little research into how we absorb these harmful chemicals through it. I was really interested that Emily Penn, who's the co-founder of Expedition, this sailing voyage, decided to have her blood tested for 35 chemicals which are banned by the United Nations. And she found 29 of them in her body, including pesticides and flame retardants. And these are chemicals that we're surrounded by every day. They're in our soft furnishings, they're in the pillows that we sleep on every night, they're in the clothes that we're wearing every day. And I think, 15 years on from that research that I've read, there's really considerable knowledge gaps about how these enter our bodies. But I think what we do know is that these toxic chemicals are endocrine disruptors, and they could potentially affect our health. And as women in particular, they can affect our fertility. And this body burden of chemicals is passed on from mother to child, and it's bioaccumulative. This means it actually accumulates through the generations. And it seems like so few people, are even starting to understand that our clothing contains chemicals at all. I know in the US the problem is even more acute because you have very few chemicals which are banned compared to the high level of chemicals which are banned within the European Union. So I've known for a long time that, as you said, for a lot of people, they're not going to act when it comes to human rights, they're not going to act when it comes to the environment, but they will start to act when it comes down to the effect on them and on their children. So that's why I thought this hashtag is really important. And it's quite shocking that brands are doing very little about it. So as part of this What's in My Clothes focus, in the Fashion Transparency Index, we have spotlight issues every year. And so we wanted to consider brands' approaches to the restricted substances that go into our clothing and the steps they're taking to eliminate virgin plastics and preventing microplastic pollution. And I was really shocked that 60% of brands in this year's index aren't publishing their restricted chemicals list, restricted substances list. So we have no way of knowing what chemicals are going into our clothing from most of the brands. And only 24% of brands have even disclosed that they have a roadmap or goal to eliminating these chemicals, and only 19% of brands are disclosing any progress towards that goal. So we really need to see brands doing so much more in this respect. Only 29% of brands are publishing any measurable progress towards reducing virgin plastics, and 20% of them are trying to explain what they're doing to reduce microfiber shedding. So when you look at those statistics, I think, you know, it's really shocking. We need to see brands doing so much more to disclose what's in our clothes.
So you've told us so much, and now I know a lot of people, when they hear about a new issue and they go, oh my gosh, how was I not aware of this? It's overwhelming and you don't know where to start. So what practical things can consumers do to help us get healthier clothing on our backs that also may have a positive environmental impact and a positive impact on the greater humanity in the world?
Yes, I mean, as I've said, you know, brands are really disclosing very little in this area. So I think the first thing we can do is we can all use our voice and our power as citizens and as customers of these brands to bring about change. I think often it feels like when we write to a brand, when we send them an email, when we send them a question on social media, that the brands aren't listening, they might not reply. But we've heard it only takes between about 50 and 150 messages to a brand on a specific issue for that to get escalated and discussed at board level. So we can all ask those questions. We can ask, who made my clothes? And we can demand an industry which is free from child labour, from modern slavery and all other forms of exploitation. We can ask what's in my clothes and demand those materials which don't generate massive environmental impacts, which don't leak microfibers and toxic chemicals into our ecosystems. We can all keep our clothes for longer. We can keep them in active use for longer. So actually just keeping your clothes for an extra 9 months of active use would reduce their energy and their water footprints by between about 20 and 30% each. So that's something really important that we can do. We can learn how to wash our clothes better. So use those short cycles, use a cool temperature, use liquid detergent and conditioner. And really we should all be washing our clothing a lot less frequently. I know so many people who wash their clothing all the time, and it's really not necessary. I mean, even some of the big jeans brands are saying, don't wash your jeans, don't wash them, wash them once a year, just give them a spray, I have a washing machine with a steam cycle, you can give it a quick freshen up. It's really not necessary to be washing our clothes as frequently as we are. We can learn how to care for our clothes. On Fashion Revolution, certainly on our YouTube site, we've got loads of resources. So if you don't know how to darn a sock or mend a hole in your jumper or take up a hem, we'll have the resources to show you how to do that. And we can learn how to consume differently. I know in New York, I was back there in September, October time. You've got some really fantastic sort of second-hand shops, vintage shops, places selling some great sort of consignment stores selling designer clothing. So really whatever end of the market you're looking at, I think New York's a really great place for that. But if you're not in a city, just swap clothes with your friends. Some of my favourite clothes I lent to friends before I went on my sailing voyage, because I was away for 6 weeks. I still haven't got them back. So look at different ways. Look at rental, not just for those special occasion clothes, but there's a lot of places doing rental now for your monthly wardrobe. And these individual actions they're all really, really important, but also they're not enough to bring about that systemic change that we want to see within the fashion industry. So we all do need to join forces, because our voices are louder and they're more powerful, as we've seen across the world in recent weeks with the Black Lives Matter. Our voices are more powerful if we all stand together and act together. And I really do believe that if we work together, we can create a global fashion industry which conserves and restores the environment, which protects the workers, which restores dignity to those workers and values the well-being of everyone and everything within the fashion supply chain over growth and over profit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I completely agree with you, Carrie. It has been absolutely fascinating to speak with you today. If people want to learn more about Fashion Revolution, where can they get more information?
You can go to our website, which is fashionrevolution.org. On social media, we are fash, F-A-S-H _rev, R-E-V. So our Instagram account has got lots of really great information, statistics and links to other resources as well. We have a really great open online course running at the moment, and that will be running every 2 months. And that's about the fashion's future, and it looks at the global goals, the sustainable development goals, and how they link in with fashion, and how we can create a more responsible fashion industry in the future. We've got so many learners, and everybody who does that course thinks it's really fantastic. That's over on the Future Learn platform. So there's lots of ways in which people can educate themselves and just start to take those steps towards holding brands responsible for the impact of the clothing which we wear.
Well, you've heard it here, listeners. It is time to start asking, who made your clothes and what's in my clothes? Carrie Summers, thank you so much for being on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
The Lindsey Elmore Show is written and produced by me, Lindsey Elmore. Show segments are produced by Sue Procco and Kelsey Lorman. Production design, sound design, and editing is by Jaiyou Media. If you have a question about this or any other episode of the podcast, send us an email to hello@lindseyelmoreshow.com. And hey, since you're still here, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And while you're at it, go over and follow us on Instagram @Lindsey Elmore Show. This helps us bring the pod to more people.